Today I'm going to do some dried moose meat, and this is an arm. The arm is made of muscles, so when you're cutting up the meat, the arm could be stew meat. It could be roast. If it's big enough, it could be roast. But today we're doing dried meat, so I will be cutting this into dry meat. And before the dry meat, if you're doing smoked meat, you just cut it and then cut in between, and then it becomes smoked meat. But right now it's dry meat. So we're starting with the arm, and then they're gonna do the whole moose is gonna be smoked meat. Dry meat. So you stay as close to the bones as possible. With the arm, it's a whole bunch of different compartments of the moose. With the leg moose, it's much easier because it seems like they're just there's like already roast into sections, so they're much easier to cut. With arm, you just cut as much as you can, but never waste any meat. So if this is the first piece, so if it was smoked meat, you'd cut it here and then cut it over and just open it up, just so that the whole thing opens up. And then you put little slits into it so that the smoke can go in there. So when you put it on the poles, it'll just open up. And when you're smoking it, it'll smoke the whole thing, and that becomes smoked meat. This one, though, it's going to be dry meat. You cut everything, like some of this is different section, but you cut it according to section, and then you cut it into different strips. Can you tell Twyla I'm videoing and the kids should be outside playing?
They're quiet now.
Yeah, but they're screaming. Okay. Now I'll be going through this like that, and then just like I said, stay close to the bone so that you get all the meat. They look like they look.
Go to your room. Go on. Go outside.
So you cut as close, and when you take all the meat off, it looks like a guitar. But the bone looks like a guitar. First you take all the meat off, and then you cut it into strips. And when you put it in a smokehouse, after a day it becomes a little bit hard. Then you put it on little poles so that it hangs down. And then sometimes when you forget, it is like being on a pole, and it looks like bent. But if you put it on a pole, it does not look bent. when you're done with all of this, there should be only bones. So if you have a lot of freezer space, you can freeze the bones too and make soup stock out of it. Mom used to say way back then they used to make knives and things from the bones. I wish I would have seen it. We try to teach our kids everything. From 5 years old and up, they sit and listen. That's what they did with their great grandma. I like doing dry meat in the springtime, because in the springtime the moose is not so fat, and if you make dry meat and you leave the fat on it, the fat turns sour when the meat is drying. So you have to cut out all that fat. But in the springtime there's hardly any fat because it's not so, they haven't gotten fat yet. I have some kids here watching. Our kids are so good. They love to watch and they love to learn. They sit around and they watch and they listen. We've been doing this since my mom died. She used to do it. Love to have one of those knives from the chefs. They have really sharp knives. But I use what I have, and my brother sharpens all of my knives for me. Much easier to work with sharp knives. We do this because it's easier in the winter time. We do our half-dried, we do our freeze our fresh ones. We do this before the salmon comes. That way it doesn't interfere with our salmon gathering. Take a picture of them all sitting there. These are my grandkids. They're helping and they're looking at what's happening here. They do that all the time. They're called goozy. They always just want to know what's going on. They check it out. That's kids. We want our younger girls to know all of this, because sooner or later we're not going to be around and somebody needs to carry this on. My girls, their parents are at home, but they're down here with me to learn and to get more into the traditional gathering and such. When I was younger, I used to just take this and just throw it around like that. But my muscles are not what they used to be. wants to hold this? Hold it up. From there. Up. Out of my way. Okay. I'm not gonna cut you. My mom used to just cut. She never really looked, but she just went by the bone. She followed the bone and meat used to just fall off. Dry meat making 101. I have so many grandkids here. They run around, they fight, they learn. We're in a place here where there is no running water, there is no plumbing and that, but we love it here. We live off the land, and then we go back to the city where we live. Can't live here in the winter time. Okay, there's more meat off the bone. So that's the bone when you take the meat off. There's hardly any meat, but with the way my mom used to do it, there was no meat. But I'm not there yet. Once we finish taking all of this off, the bones that we don't use gets taken to an island we call Bone Island. Get out here with it. And then it goes back to the land. Like different animals feed on it, but it's just the bones. We don't take anything that's worth eating there, because if you don't use the rest of it, then you can can it. There's many ways you can salvage this meat. When my mom finished with it, it was just like nice. There, that's done. We try with dry meat, you try to take all the meat. If you're not drying this, then this would be stew meat, because stew you have to cook it a long time. This one is all gristle. It's tough, but if you cook it long, if you make it into half dried and you make stew out of it, you cook the stew meat long so it's nice and soft. But we'll see what happens with this. Okay. One more flip. If you people out there see these young ladies, they're gonna be expert at this. They're the kind of young ladies that people are gonna want to have, because They know. They've learned. Back in the day, that's what men looked for, with women that did things. Okay. Okay, put this, who's stronger? Put this over there so that we can take more meat off it and freeze it. Just on that side of the table. Because there's still some more meat for chunks. Yeah, thank you. Okay, now that we're here, we need to start making different people have different way of cutting the dry meat. This has been hung for over a day, so the meat is not so floppy. It's kind of hard, so that it's easier to cut. I need that silver bowl, the big one. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Now you try to make the dry meat as thin as can be, like as you can. With Mom, she used to make it thick, but for some reason, somehow, it always turned out nice. But I like it kind of thin, like so it can dry. You put it on a pole up there like that, and then it dries. About a day later, you go back and you put it on little poles, little sticks, and you put about 10 on there, and then you put it in between the poles, and then it dries some more, so that when it's dried, it's like not bent. Okay, so this will keep going, just taking strips. And right now in our smokehouse, there's deer meat, dry deer meat. That's already done. So that's the second piece of dry meat. I see a lot of young men that do dry meat in our nation. I'm so proud of them. It takes time. I like doing half-dried because it's not so much time doing it, because you just have to open up the meat and put it up. But with dry meat, it's strip by strip. My sister does it really good. I'm just doing this first while, and then she's doing the rest of it. So there, it's just thin. So that's the dry meat section for the teaching today. I'd like to thank you for watching. Goodbye.